pleasure of introducing our first panel discussion of the day, which is going to focus on resilience. It's a very important word, I think, for all musicians. The panel is going to explore ways that musicians can build mental, physical and financial resilience, prioritise their well-being and feel empowered to navigate difficult times, of which there are many right now. So the panel will be chaired by music broadcaster, writer and curator Sarah Moore-Keach. You might recognise her voice from BBC Radio 3, where she presents Night Tracks and Music Matters. Sarah is also the director of Dartington Music Summer School and Festival. And the panellists joining her will be Greg Daubney, Chartered Sport and Exercise Psychologist, Winning Essence and the British Association of Performing Arts Medicine. Susie Green, tour manager and founder of the Back Lounge, an online community which was longlisted for BBC Radio 4's Mental Health All in the Mind Awards in 2021. Sarah Osborne, Deputy CEO and Director of Business Development at the ISM, and Arthur Valika, Head of Clinical Operations at CIC, a leading mental health and wellbeing provider which provides a counselling and advice service for ISM members. So, please come up to the stage.
Hello everybody, it's very, very nice to be here. I'm incredibly grateful to the ISM for inviting me to come and chair this panel on a subject which I think is incredibly important, and there are many, many layers to the discussion which we will only scratch the surface of in this, but hopefully there will be thoughts and ideas that can continue that conversation for all of you and for the panelists and everyone after today. I was part of the Empowered Musician 2018, we were talking about well-being then. And one of the things that the ISM said to me when they asked me to do this was perhaps you could reflect on what's changed since then. And wouldn't it be wonderful if I could say, the world has gone from strength to strength. There are flowers blooming and people feel good about themselves. We've really learned loads, but of course we have had numerous challenges that I don't need to remind you of in the last 5 years. So resilience feels like an important thing to be looking at. I wanted also just to give some basic definitions of that word, and I think as we talk we'll be defining and redefining what resilience means and what it looks like. But when you look it up, there are two main meanings of resilience, and one has to do with a degree of strength in withstanding difficulty, an ability to continue to survive and possibly also thrive when met with challenges. The other, which has to do more with a kind of organic understanding of resilience, is the possibility of returning to a former state and form following some kind of either trauma or event or challenge. And that's something I'd really love us to think about as we're discussing this. When we talk about resilience, are we talking about the flexibility to adapt and change and transform, or are we talking about the ability to continue to do what it is that we do, whatever we're thrown at, or is thrown at us? So that was just some thoughts from me about resilience. I remember once I was in conversation with a really extraordinary Blackfoot elder who described buffalo as a prime example of a resilient community. The buffalo in the plains, when there's a storm, they huddle together and they face straight through the eye of the storm. And as a community, as a species, they've learned how best to weather that storm. So the strongest and most resilient, perhaps, of the community of the buffalo go up front, and the weakest and the eldest and the young are behind them and also huddled together on the inside so that they're sheltered. And they head straight through the eye of the storm, which is the quickest way to get through it. And of course that is about group resilience and community resilience. And the other more recent time that I've come across this word is as a parent, when I'm dealing with the guilt of what it is I throw at my daughter, what she has to cope with. And people often say to me, but children are so resilient. And there's an extent to which I think, yeah, isn't that wonderful that they learn, they adapt, they take whatever we throw at them. But there's also a question about how much should my child have to be resilient? How fair is that to ask her to be resilient, to throw things at her, which means that she has to adapt? So there are some thoughts and ideas about resilience. And I think let's go through each member of the panel and hear some thoughts on their own experience of working with musicians. Susie, can we start with you? Would you mind? Yeah, you can take the microphone and is it on? It is on. And share some thoughts and reflections on working with musicians and the kind of stresses and strains that you have on it.
So I'll do my best not to sound like the voice of doom. I'm a tour manager. First of all, very interested in Buffalo Energy. Hold on to that one. I worked in this business about nearly 25 years. I've done various different things, but mostly tour managing. So live is very much my thing. Because of the way the music industry is structured, obviously the live part of a musician's career is huge. It's quite often the biggest income, depending on what level you're at. And it's almost a requirement of something you're going to have to be able to do. You have to have some kind of resilience in performance, in performing night after night after night, and switching on the magic. That in itself has its own stresses. I guess I'm a very much behind the scenes person. I'm not always sitting up here with a mic, so bear with me. But there's definitely some things I've really identified that comes up a lot for people working live. There's the obvious things. Obviously, it's a very high stress job. You're often moving every day. Poor sleep is massive. That's whether you're sleeping on a tour bus or changing hotels. Tour bus is, the upper echelons of touring. Quite often it's at, B&Bs, fairly low-fi. And yes, sleep really does underpin everything. And I think that's one of the key things that touring definitely does not take into consideration. Poor food as well. And I think all of these things are quite often tools to keep people on the straight and narrow, to keep people grounded. When they're in this ever-changing world that touring is. I've made some notes. Unsociable hours, I think that goes without saying. Again, you might think that's a very obvious stressor, but sort of behind that, quite often is when you're away from home, you're away from your support networks. So whether that's friends, or sponsors, or family, the people, your go-to people when you've had a bad day. And quite often you're surrounded by people you might not know very well, you're not quite sure who you can trust. If you have a problem on the road, which sometimes musicians do, whether it's falling out with someone or not feeling supported, who mediates that problem? Is the person who mediates, if that's your manager or your tour manager, is that someone you can trust? Is that someone who's looking out for your best interest? I would say all these things existed prior to the pandemic, but also to pick up on your point about post-pandemic, and since the last time you were sitting here in 2018, I would say things have changed, good and bad. On the good side, we're sitting here talking about this. I think that's amazingly positive. I see more and more musicians being outspoken about whether they have mental health issues, whether they have physical issues. I just read yesterday a big artist, Frank Ocean, who was headlining one of the stages at Coachella, has just pulled out due to physical injury. But physical injury is one thing, mental challenges is something else. And I think we're definitely talking about that more. That has got to be a good thing. The downside, post-pandemic, post-Ukraine war, post-Brexit, how many challenges would you like? All of these things affect the bottom line on a tour. What is the profit? Everyone's always looking at the profit. How can we save money? Why are tours so expensive now? And the trouble is, quite often where they try and save money is things like where you stay, what level of hotel, when you get a gym. I mean, you might think this sounds trivial, but if you're out on the road for 2 months, 3 months, maybe an 18-month campaign, you need every little bit of thing that's going to keep you well and grounded. You may be surrounded by poor lifestyle choices. Again, depending often what kind of music you make and who you work with, whether that's alcohol or drugs, or poor living. You may have made decisions at home that this is where I need to stay well, and to stay grounded, and to get my creative best. Take that on tour with a bunch of people who maybe don't have the same values as you do, and that can be incredibly challenging. See if there's anything else that's going to cover. Last thing, boundaries. I think the music industry, boundaries are constantly being challenged. Relationships between people can be very confusing, whether that's between you and your manager, you and your orchestra mates, your band mates, your crew. Are they your friend? Are they there because, you're actually their boss quite often, you're the artist, although it's not often perceived like that. I think that can be very challenging, and even more so when you throw in sleep deprivation, touring, all the stresses that come from that. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. That's incredibly helpful. It feels like you just sort of laid out what the real challenges are for so many touring musicians. Don't you work a lot with musicians through your work in BAPAM, and you've worked in small band performing arts as well? What do you understand to be the main challenges facing musicians, and how also do you define resilience in the face of that?
Well, hello everyone. For me, I think resilience, really, what we're looking at is there's two aspects to it. There is very much the bounce back ability aspect that you were mentioning earlier, very temporary setbacks and then coming back to a state that we were before, or potentially heightened. But more than that, there is what we call robust resilience, which is more proactive, which is about self-care and developing your own personal qualities to be able to handle the inevitable stresses that come at us in all their guises, whether they're global based or national based or even individual based. So having that understanding that actually resilience, this is something that I can work on, this is something within me that isn't fixed, I can work on this, I can do things to help myself and care for myself. And from my work with BAPAM, I think the biggest thing I've seen is just how unbelievably resilient performing artists, musicians are. I'm constantly amazed and, to be honest, overjoyed when I see the internal inner strength that people have. It takes a lot of courage to be able to reach out for support and help and assistance. And then doing that to engage with the process of recovery and preparing ourselves for what could be thrown at us. So I'm always quite optimistic anyway about things, but and it's not always easy, particularly in the current climate with the arts. But for me, my takeaway is I'm just so impressed by how resilient musicians are.
Can you say a bit about the work that you do with BAPAM and how that practically works in helping musicians to build resilience?
Yeah, so for sure. So BAPAM, the British Association for Performing Arts Medicine, they started a scheme 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, called Music Minds Matter. And that scheme opens up the possibility of up to 12 free counselling sessions with a trained mental health practitioner. And what I see that comes to me may well start off on a music basis. It might be something like music performance anxiety, for example. But as we go along, what we notice is that it doesn't just occur, these problems don't just occur in the music realm, you know, we bring in everything else into our music and what we're doing. So what we're working on is we then work together to try to produce or work on mental skills to help develop resiliency. So mental skills such as building confidence, planning, really effective planning for what might happen, and opening up to ourselves and our emotions, what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what would be effective for me as a performer, what do I need, how can I get myself into these kind of performance states that will help me, that will be facilitative. And through BAPAN, that's available at a time when finances are very difficult, you know, and that's a really, really big thing to have this available.
And I think finance is going to come up more and more actually, you know, the cost of living crisis being one of the things which is really, really affecting musicians and their well-being and ability to be able to be resilient in the face of all other things that we brought up. Sarah, could you also say a bit about the ISM and what you offer, and also that interrelationship between mental, physical, financial stability, well-being?
Thank you, good morning. I actually want to go back to your starting point with the buffalo, because I think in a way the ISM is that herd of buffalo. We are the people that will be at the front, supporting and surrounding you, because the range of services that we offer extends into health and well-being. We've got our own counselling service, which Arthur can talk to us more about. We have a physiotherapy service, so you can have fast-track access to physiotherapy. We have partnered with Help Musicians, so we are now part of the Musicians Hearing Health Scheme. So there are lots of ways and services that we have that will help you with your health and well-being. But beyond that, it's really how not being able to work affects the other parts of your life. So if you have an injury, a physical injury, which means that you have to cancel a contract, you have to cancel a concert or a gig, you'll have a contract that goes alongside that. So a legal team is there to help you understand and navigate your way through. How do you talk to the promoter? What's the legal position? So there's this great interconnectivity between physical health, financial health, which inevitably, in a lot of cases, ends up there being a legal element. And then the other things that we've been talking about. Well, if you can't play, how does that make you feel? You know, if you're turning down work because you're not in a position to take it on, that all has an impact on your well-being and your approach to your career, to your work. So all these things come together through the ISM, and we really, you know, have the most fantastic, helpful staff team. So you really can just pick up the phone, and we will talk you through your circumstances and look at how we can help and support you. I just wanted, if I may, to talk a bit about my earlier life. Before I joined the ISM, the first part of my career was spent as publisher, so I worked with composers and songwriters, and that is one of the most isolating parts of the industry that I've ever known, and it really hit home to me how important it was for composers at the end of the day to just pick up the phone. Honestly, sometimes it's the last thing I wanted because I had a million and one things to do on my to-do list. But it was so important to always find time to talk to my composers, to talk to musicians, because it is such an isolating part of the profession. And it's about having your support network around you. As Susie was saying, you need those people who can be there for you through thick or thin. And those can be people who give you energy, because you have to be aware that some people drain energy from you, and you need both parts in your life. So it's very important to have that. I call this almost tribal. You sort of need to have your tribe around you, and ISM is able to provide some of those aspects.
Thank you, Sarah. Arthur, can I ask you then to pick up and tell us about what CIC offers? And very particularly also drawing on your experience in working as a public servant in financial advice and the extent to which financial vulnerability affects musicians and their mental health.
Yep, sure. Hi everyone. So yes, I'm head of clinical operations for CIC, and what that means is that we provide mental health support to any of the ISM members. We've got our clinicians who pick up the phone or will answer to emails as well, and that is for any kind of emotional support that you need, or even a one-off support that you need. If you've suddenly had an injury and you can't perform, just using piggybacking on one of these examples, and you're feeling quite stressed and you're in an unhappy place, and the weekend is coming up where you're supposed to perform, you can actually call us and we'll help you through that process to get you through it so that your resilience doesn't get affected either. Aside from that, we also provide financial guidance because we've got partnerships with third-party organizations that can get you in the right direction and all. So it's Monday to Friday, it's a 24-hour service. Saturdays is there as well, 10 to 4 where our clinicians will take the call, but we've also got the out of hours. So I will encourage you, don't wait till you reach the breaking point. It's actually better to contact us beforehand. A little bit about the financial vulnerability and financial resilience. I worked with the Treasury and DWP for quite a few years on financial policies and vulnerabilities. And what I've found is that financial resilience is basically our ability to withhold any life event or change that could impact our income. That's what it is. How do we actually get through that? And the vulnerability part of it is when the income is not guaranteed, we're automatically vulnerable. So musicians are already in that back foot before anything is even started because of the variable income. And I think it's about psychologically first accepting that as a reality, that there's going to be variable income is the starting point to becoming resilient. Because that's, it's the same as an alcoholic saying, yes, I am an alcoholic. It's a terrible comparison, but that's the only thing that popped in my head. And I don't even drink, so I just wanted to clarify that as well. But that for me is absolutely crucial. Now, I was reading up some stats and figures which I wanted to share with the UK charity Help Musicians, I think they're called. And what they found in statistically amongst musicians is that post-COVID, around 83% of musicians who had standard work, consistent work coming in, no longer have that. Nearly 90% of the people that they surveyed were now only earning £1,000 a month. Right, and this is very interesting. If you go on their website and read about it, I even contacted them and had a conversation with them. And nearly 90% of them can't even afford musical equipment. They're taking out loans and going to loan sharks, which is absolutely a no-go area because of just the way the interest rates work and then impacting your credit as well. So there are a lot of options and all. And the best way to plan is, number one, be prepared that you're entering you're in an industry and a landscape where there is variable income. The best way to manage variable income is through budgeting. Now, I know that's a really boring word. Even when my mom tells me to this day, and I just turned 47, have you budgeted for this? It does my head in. But I do have the luxury of a consistent salary coming in, so I can create excuses. Even though that's not good. But the variable income, it is absolutely crucial for budgeting. The websites to go to, they are all over the place. It's either on gov.uk or the Money Helper website. I'm more than happy to share it with ISM so that it can be circulated. But the Money Helper website has a very straightforward budgeting tool over there. And that has been designed for people with variable incomes. And what I mean by that is, you normally will look at, when you're doing budgeting, is to look at your outgoings first, not your income. Look at your outgoings, and then you look at your minimum income that you might have. And that's how you start the budgeting. Or roughly what you earned in 12 months, and then you divide it by 12. But the starting point is to actually work out what your outgoings is. So that's there. Debt is a huge problem with musicians. So when I worked with Money Advice Services, part of the Treasury, we had a lot of independent musicians calling us who were in severe debt. and it's about making that call to us. You can call us at CIC as well, and we'll point you in the right direction. I'm not sure if you're aware there are government schemes out there, and what I mean by the government schemes, there's something called Breathing Space. Breathing Space is a government initiative. It's for debt. It's a debt scheme where you can legally ask the company, your creditor that you're in debt with, for some breathing space and you get back on track because you are struggling with the payment. You don't even have to give evidence. You can just say, I'm not doing well, I have, my tour got cancelled, my performance got cancelled, I thought I was going to get paid when I was going to perform at the weekend, but all they gave me was a hot meal or gave me some pints for my friends. They haven't paid me yet. And what Breathing Space does is the creditor actually can give you up to 60 days leeway till you get back on track. If you have a more serious mental health illness, what you can ask through your physician is what's called a critical illness breathing space. And that is for a longer duration till you are struggling coming back on your feet. So these are absolutely critical ones, and these are all on gov.uk, on the Money Helper website, and these are some practical things I thought would be quite useful to understand. There's self-assessment tax tools. You're not waiting a whole year to gather up and then suddenly get slammed with a £10,000 tax bill. You can actually, even with small payments, even if you get paid £100, this assessment tools will tell you how much to put aside. Create another account, you start putting in a few pennies here, a few pounds there, so at the end of the year, you're not struggling. So that's all about the financial resilience and planning. And it's about making that call, either to us at CIC or go on the Money Helper website. There are a lot of debt organizations that will support, and it's all free of charge. You do not need to go to a financial advisor who will charge you.
It's incredibly helpful. I mean, for anybody, particularly for freelancers, it's incredibly helpful to have those kinds of pieces of information, on offer, and it's everything that has been described here, everything from practical financial advice to the offer of counselling, physiotherapy, all really invaluable. I want to ask about the challenges that are faced then, and the way in which we respond and relate to them. The planning that you described, and also the kind of planning and forethought that you were bringing in about how with resilience we're able to meet absolutely any challenge. There are predictable challenges. We know when we go on tour that maintaining our health, mental health, physical health, diet, etc. might be challenging, and you can predict some of those and plan for them. But then there are unpredictable changes. Nobody knew a pandemic was coming. It came, and suddenly we're dealing with a whole new set of circumstances. Nobody predicted the war in Ukraine. There's all sorts of things that were completely unpredicted. The cost of living crisis, perhaps, but to some extent we're dealing at the moment with continued shifts and changes in the landscape, which mean there's simply no way, particularly if you're coming from a position of having been already in a slightly vulnerable position, to then actually be able to put that kind of effort into planning. So, I mean, sorry if that sounds, again, a little bit dismal, and we will come round to, much more positive news towards the end. But from that place of, I'm already feeling depleted, I'm already stressed, I'm already concerned about things, and now there's yet a new challenge. How do you find the resource to do that kind of planning?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's about really noticing and bringing on the self-awareness in the first instance. That's always the major first intervention, is to have an understanding of what am I feeling here, what's showing up here for me, what is happening at this moment in time, and then taking care of yourself in the first instance. So when we have lots of shifting sands under our feet, and we can't find foundation, then that's a perfect breeding ground for anxiety. Our minds really love certainty, and anxiety breeds when there's uncertainty. So acknowledging that times can be really difficult, sitting down and giving ourselves the opportunity to actually be with those emotions and be with those difficult thoughts, and sometimes catastrophizing about it, which will happen, but knowing that actually it's okay. I don't have to act on these harmful emotions. I can allow them to be there, you know. And by doing that, what we do is we give ourselves the opportunity, a bit like the financial aspect of having some breathing space, just a little bit of breathing space to allow us to sort of stand back from the situation and work out, okay, what can I do next? You know? Because when everything comes in, and when we're feeling anxious and sometimes depressed and low mood, that can really take over, and we lose the person behind all that maelstrom, all that storm that's coming through. We lose ourselves, you know, we lose contact with ourselves. And by allowing a bit of time to just get a bit of space and know that actually these things are here, but I can let them be here, and I don't have to act on them. And then one of the things I would always recommend to do is connect. Connect with friends, connect with family, connect with community, connect with anywhere you can find open and available support. You know, through the ISM has fantastic resources available. BAPAM also has very, very good access to healthcare professionals. So in the first instance, it's a bit like dropping anchor in a storm. We're just going to drop anchor and not move for a bit, and then once the storm eases, we can then move on to work out, what do I do next?
So in your experience, what's the kind of general percentage of, whether you've got exact figures or not, of musicians who kind of hit the point of saying, actually, in order to have resilience, I need to stop being a musician. I either need to stop being a musician, or I need to retrain in something else in order to give myself more to draw on.
Gosh, I don't think I can put a number on it, but I think certainly what we've seen in terms of our members contacting us is that there is undoubtedly a lot of pressure, and a lot of people really looking at what does it mean to be a musician, and what does my career look like, and maybe the career that I envisage isn't the career that I've ended up with. And there's definitely a sense of thinking about how to bring about financial stability, and a lot of people have trained for many years, and all the hours and hours of practice, or the teaching that you do, all these things, thinking about where has that left me. You know, I'm still struggling to pay my rent. I'm looking at how I can afford to put fuel in my car. You know, sort of, is this the life that I envisaged? And obviously, we at the ISM are, you know, we're doing a lot of campaigning and advocating work, and really trying to get the message across to government that, you know, music, we are a profession, you know, we want viable jobs and careers. So on the one hand, we are doing all this lobbying and campaigning work, but we're very aware that all the musicians are out there looking at the very real situation which is in front of them. So I think we have seen people leaving the industry. I think that's completely heartbreaking. I think it is likely to continue, that the ISM will certainly be doing all that we can to ensure that music does remain a viable profession, and that it is possible to make a living that's more than just scraping by, and every month, you know, being on tenterhooks as to, are you going to make it to the end of the month and get all those bills paid?
Yeah, and I mean, even where, you know, financial circumstances aren't the leading stressor, identities are hugely bound up with you know, being a musician, being an artist, being recognised as such. I know a huge number of musicians who, although they managed financially, partly because they might have a partner in a different industry, managed through the pandemic. One of the hardest things with the kind of constant cancellation, a constant sense of uncertainty about, I don't know when this project is going to happen. So much of my energy went into it, now it's stopped. They're not sure if they're going to be able to do it in another 6 months or a year, and that those sort of shifting sands have been incredibly hard to deal with. Can I ask you, Susie, about your own experience? Because you, after kind of reaching a real point of burnout, you stopped working as a tour manager and retrained as a naturopath and nutritionist, and then came back in again. And about that experience, effectively, to some degree, you took breathing space and then came back in again. What was that like?
I feel almost like I have to confess first of all, because finance is such a big thing here. And yes, I paid my first tax bill on my credit card because I wasn't prepared. I didn't know a tax bill was incoming. I hadn't read the small bill, there wasn't a small print. But yeah, everything here is about preparation, isn't it? So yeah, I toured for 10 years. I mean, I did various things within that. And actually, I was so excited, I couldn't believe I was actually earning a living, like you say, sometimes just. But this is the thing I loved. I've always been really passionate about music. I was saying yes to everything. I hadn't yet learned to figure the difference between what I was able to take on and what I wasn't. So I burnt out. I realised almost like one day to the next, this thing I'd absolutely loved had become this thing that I was resenting. I was missing weddings, funerals, birthday parties. I was always away, always very wrapped up in work. And I think this is a lifestyle choice. You know, if you're a musician, if you're working in this industry, you don't go home on Friday night often. You know, you might have times in your year that are like that, but there's nothing steady about this. There's nothing very certain about this. So what I've learned, I guess, turning my back on, you know, what I was doing, I retrained as a naturopath and nutritionist, and then I did that for about 10 years and had a lot of clinic practice with people in performing arts. Then I got offered a tour, completely out of the blue, by a manager I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, who was looking for a tour manager who could support his artists who had quite a long history of nervous exhaustion and burnout, and I've been through this, so I can understand it. So I went back to touring. It was an amazing opportunity, but I went back armed with a different skill set, which kind of goes back to that point that Greg was saying, you can learn some of this stuff. Some of it is life experience, but there are most definitely tools and techniques you can use to stay, you know, grounded and calm and rooted, which is the point, isn't it? That's how you deliver your best art often. I don't really buy into this suffering for your art, and I think that's an illusion.
I'm glad you bring that in actually, because I was I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask questions as well. We've got about 20 minutes left before lunch, but just to draw it down to, I suppose, what is the most positive in this, which is that resilience and flexibility and an ability to meet whatever comes at you in the moment is embedded in the nature of being a performing musician, of being a creative artist. You know, particularly if you work with other musicians, but even as a solo artist and, you know, or solo creative, songwriter, composer, the ability to be presented with something that comes up in the moment and respond flexibly and draw on your own creative imagination. I was, some years ago, I was involved in a training that the Transition Network did. I did one of their weekend training courses, the Transition Towns Network, which is really about building local resilience in the face of climate emergency and you know, individual communities coming together, be they local or industry, and saying, you know, how do we respond to the fact that we need to move ourselves off the dependence on fossil fuels and also create something for the future that looks both resilient, regardless of what gets thrown at us as a result of the climate emergency, but also positive. And really what's behind that is the imagination, the power of creative imagination to imagine, how might I make this look different? How could it be in the future? And that feels to me very much a skill that creative practitioners and performing artists absolutely have. Yes, absolutely. And then we'll throw it open to questions, because I'm sure there's lots of people.
There's just one other thing that I think is quite important to know about the bills. and I'm not sure if many of you know that actually all the bills do not hold the same standing and priority. Alright, so when you get a bill like a water bill versus a council tax bill, which one should you pay first? So there's a vocabulary used in the world of debt which is regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, and that's priority debt. What I would suggest is there's a tool on the gov.uk website and Money Helper called the Bill Prioritization Tool. It will tell you which bills are absolutely critical for you to pay. The government is not going to switch off the water immediately when you stop paying that bill. You'll have quite a lot of time to get on top of it. But the council tax is right up there in the priority. Suddenly you might get your gym membership, and now you've fallen sick, you can't pay it, or if you're relying on your partner's income, something's happened there as well, you can't pay it. And normally these other non-priority bills come in these letters with red fonts, massive font 50, and all of this scaring the living daylight out of people. And it's about just remaining calm at that time and saying, okay, I've got all of these bills, I can only afford to pay 2 out of these 5. Which ones should I pay, and which one should I go into the breathing space option for? And those are the practical things to think about. But that's really important. And also about mental, I'm just going to end on mental health and financial are interrelated. If you're mentally unwell, it's going to impact how you manage your finances because impulsive buying, retail therapy comes in, right? And vice versa. Financially, if you're not stable, it impacts your mental health. So it's best to be prepared. You've got a legal team within ISM as well. Look at any insurance products or income protection that the government offers to self-employed people as well. So all of these things can help you when you get stuck and there's no income coming in.
Thank you so much, that's really helpful. Okay, let's see if there are any questions. Raise your hand. Is there a microphone? There is a microphone. So if you have a question, wait for the mic to come to you and then everyone can hear what you're asking. Be brave. Yes, let's start with you over there and we'll come back. Hello, my name's Elaine. Thank you so much. It's been so insightful to hear everything you've got to say, and in particular, Susie, I really relate to what you were saying about touring. I've worked actually in theatre in the past, and I've done a lot of touring, and I've experienced all the difficulties you were saying, but no one's ever voiced that out loud. To just hear someone saying, I understand these are the problems you're facing, is really important, and I don't think it happens enough. So that was quite amazing to hear. I've now moved into a more stable position. I do project management in the music industry, and I love it. But I just wonder if following the pandemic, you found that there were a lot of people who moved careers from touring into something more stable. I know you mentioned this slightly as well in terms of people changing career because they can't face the financial burdens, but also in terms of mental resilience. I wonder if there have been any changes, because that's sort of something that happened to me. I went back to touring after the pandemic and thought, actually, no, I need more stability in my life. And then also a sort of second part to this question is there a way that we can support more local work for musicians, or a way of managing touring that makes it better for our mental health in terms of more breaks and possibilities to come back home in between stints of touring, because sometimes the tours are so long and it's just too much. Thank you.
Susan, do you want to respond?
I'm just thinking where to start actually. I'll start where you just ended. I think it's really interesting about the local work, because I think sustainability really comes into that. Because putting a tour on the road is, which is why touring has become so expensive, the cost of fuel underwrites everything. That's whether you have trucks with equipment in, that's whether you're buying food at the supermarket, how do you get it got there, how you pay for the caterers, they put their costs up. I think it impacts everything. I hugely support local shows, maybe, but here's the thing, because I don't quite know the answer to this question, but you think, I think Coldplay were trying this, less moving around and multiple shows, but then that impacts the audience, because then the audience have to travel to the show, and actually one of the big environmental issues is travel. How do people travel? Are they getting on planes? Quite often they are when they're travelling to a big show like something like Coldplay. Now, changing career. So I run this peer group, which came about because I was lonely at the beginning of the pandemic. But mostly I was going through a complete identity crisis. Who am I without this job? And I know that's a real thing for musicians as well as obviously financial. Suddenly, one day to the next, couldn't work. No money. How am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay for anything? We've had people come on the group. We've had endless Amazon drivers, people working at supermarkets, lots of frontline workers, lots of people working in test centres. We've had a grave digger. Never done it before. Actually, really enjoyed the outside life. He said so. As for after the pandemic, it's interesting. I don't know so much about musician statistics. I know for crew, I read a really interesting statistic actually in the US that 34% of crew have left the industry, they haven't come back to it. I would say it's probably comparable in the UK as well, and I know that because I struggle to find crew to man my tours. It should be a different term than manning a tour, but anyway. But yeah, it's a thing. I think, I can speak for myself as well, the ongoing uncertainty is exhausting. I think having something else, another skill set, is a fantastic idea. Whether you are able to do some kind of IT work or something to fall back on. I mean, that sounds like quite a depressing notion, but never a bad idea to look at your skills and see what you can expand if you should ever need it temporarily.
And on where you began, just to say how wonderful it is to hear somebody voicing what you've experienced. The power of an organisation like yours, it's Backlounge, yes, Backlounge, which has now like thousands of members.
So somehow I've created a rod on my back. I run this voluntary peer group and everyone is welcome.
And it's online?
It's online. We Zoom nearly every week on lots of different topics. Mostly about resilience in some form or other. It's something, the power about hearing other people go through the same things you're experiencing is mind-blowing. And whether that person is in Chicago or Brighton or wherever, it's incredible. And just that acknowledgement that you are not alone. You are not the only person who has issues working in an industry like that is step one, I think.
How do we find it?
We're on Facebook, Instagram, it's the Backlounge Forum, and it's the Backlounge because of the Backlounge on tour buses where quite often a lot of the deep talk happens. And I have a website which is healthy-touring.com. Everyone is welcome, it's free, there's never a charge, we have some amazing people come on, so.
Thank you so much. There was another question down here. Did you remember? You did? There's also one on the other side of the aisle.
Thank you very much. What an amazing panel with something from really valuable from all of you. I just wanted to raise a point about the budgeting, which is falls down to several freelance performing friends in the classical music world. And it's often the case that they will be asked to, or booked to perform somewhere, say, up to 2 months before something. They do the performance with the payment agreed. And then the payment comes in late. Was that delay? And I'm just wondering, because this seems to be fairly common in the classical music world as far as that's concerned, whether, I don't know, if the ISM could just raise awareness because this is very stressful for people and particularly now when there's so many things to think about the cost of living crisis.
Thank you, Sarah. You can do that one, yes. So our fantastic legal team, Catherine here from the legal team, if you are owed money, the ISM can chase it up for you, and we are very successful. We collect thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds a year on behalf of our members. So there is definitely a practical route that you can take in terms of recovering money. There's also a wider campaign that the ISM is part of
because we are involved in a group called the Creators' Rights Alliance, and they have a Pay the Creator campaign, which is around raising awareness of this very issue, late payments, how freelancers are treated, being paid on time, all these things. So there's a campaigning element that we are working on as well. But the main thing is there's some advice on our website, and just don't sit there in silence, contact our legal team because they will be able to help.
Thank you so much. Can you bring the mic down here?
I went to film school, and part of the experience was people saying, I worked for 2 days straight, I never got to sleep for 3 days, and that almost became a sort of badge of honour amongst the composers. And it turned into the directors wanted to work with people who worked for the longest, almost as if that was a measure of their quality of work. I teach now, how can we stop young people adopting that kind of bad work practice at such an early age, because they do the work and then they come and screen it, and their eyes are stinging and they're tired and they can't really recognise each other's work. How can we stop them getting into that bad habit so early?
Great. Because this brings in actually the question of all bad habits around creative practice and maintaining your own well-being.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's very, very difficult. I think, what we're looking at there is really the environment surrounding the individual. I know today we've looked a lot at what the individual can do, but the environment surrounding the individual in that kind of instance often creates lots of bad habits. Being deprived of sleep, sometimes taking extra stimulants to stay awake, not eating very well because your body isn't re-regulating itself. So, those are very, very difficult to change when we have that kind of environment. But again, I think it's looking at connecting with each individual, what's important to them, with what they're doing. And the first stage will be noticing that this is actually happening. This is a really bad thing that's happening, but it's happening for a reason. Okay, it's been reinforced. I'm doing this because it's helping me feel like I'm going to get on. I've got the best chance of doing well. So it's got really strong reinforcers there for it. So what we've got to try to do is to then say, okay, that might work in the short term, but can this continue indefinitely? And the probability is it's not going to be able to. So then it's a question of looking at, okay, what else can we do? What other options have you got available to you? And I was working with a jazz musician who had precisely that kind of problem. He was being was being asked to work lots and lots of late nights. Not starting till 11 o'clock at night, going through till 4 in the morning. And then he'd just be shattered, by the constantness of having to do that in order to be paid and make money. And with him, it was about, let's sit down. If you want that to continue, that's okay. We can do that. But if you want to make change, let's have a look at what we do next. And trying to connect with how can we make this slightly healthier for you. So, for example, in that instance, he wouldn't then go out and have drinks afterwards. He would just go straight home and try and go to sleep. Not very easy, but the temptation is to be sociable afterwards, hang around the bar, and so he chose, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to finish and then go home as soon as I can. It's not a massive step, it's not the ultimate step, but once you start moving in a direction, you're generally likely to find that other things will move with you. Things will start to come to you that maybe you hadn't thought before. Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Did you want to say something about it?
I was just going to say, I've got lots to say about this, I'll try to keep it really short. Yeah, absolutely prepare. Decide your boundaries before you go. Sleep, hard one to negotiate, but make the sleep you get as good as you can. So I know that might sound silly, but it works. Drops on your pillow, whether it's CBD oil helps you. There's a big thing when you come off stage, you're very amped up. If you're a crew person, you might be loading out. You know, your adrenaline's going. Invariably, what's on offer is a slice of pizza, not the best thing to eat before you go to sleep. And a few beers, because that's the quickest way to wind down your nervous system. But if, like you were saying, you make that decision, okay, this I can get away with 2 times a week, 3 times a week maybe, but all the other times of the week, it's going to be about maximising my sleep. Likewise with food, I mean, a ridiculous bag of things that I carry with me. I have a NutriBullet. I know that I can always make something that would be fairly good for me, even if everything else is terrible. It's just that, trying to think before you go, what are going to be my stresses for me, which might be different, you know, to say you, and how can I try and mitigate some of those so that it supports me. And then you already have resilience to deal with some of the things that you weren't expecting, that no one could foresee. If you can control some of those little things, it's a great start.
And one of the things that I've been really struck by, we're going to have to finish in a moment, but as the discussion has continued, has been about the balance between individual resilience and group or industry resilience. In fact, when I was first asked to take part in this panel, I thought it was a panel about, you know, the music industry. How can the music industry be resilient in everything that it's facing? And that feels like it's a whole other panel discussion and a whole other day of consideration of how organisations working within music can be resilient in the face of everything that the industry is faced with at the moment and everything that's going on globally. But this interplay between, you know, that you need platform up front, you need the ISM, you need organisations, you need resources that you can draw on. And as an individual also to understand your part in it, your own bottom line, your own needs, the specificity of what will keep you flexible, resilient, able to continue doing what you love, boil it right down to what's most important to you and what matters most and which bill most needs to be paid and what you most need to eat in order to get the right amount of sleep. And then to begin to shape things with a degree of confidence, and everything that you've been describing, Greg, comes from a place of saying, you know, how can I maintain my own sense of self, my own sense of value within this, not be entirely swayed by what's happening externally, and then begin to make choices and also have the confidence to reach out and ask for the kind of help that is on offer. And there is so much of it. That's a terrible brief summary of where we've got to so far. I just want to say an enormous thank you to all 4 of you for bringing such, you know, warmth and care and insight, as well as really, really useful ideas and resources. And we'll be around as well. You can ask further questions afterwards. But please join me in thanking all.